Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Allen, joined by my usual broadcast partner, former NHL defenseman Tom Laidlaw, who played 11 seasons for the New York Rangers and Los Angeles Kings. This is the Laidlaw and Allen Report. Come to you twice a week to talk all things hockey and whatever else comes to mind for us. And, I'll just make an initial comment. Aaron Judge woke out of, I hate to even call it a slump. When you got 55 home runs, you're not in a slump. But he hadn't hit a home run in a few days, and he had two last.
It is 60 by Roger Maris. Is that correct? Is that?
Well,
no. They went back. Those guys that were juicing, they went past.
Yeah. We're a long way from that. To be honest with you, that magic number 61 and so forth was, etched in everyone's mind, and now I'm hard pressed to tell you what the record is in the juicing era. So
Sammy Sosa,
Mark McGuire,
But I hear a lot of people on the talk shows kind of separating those guys out of it, saying that the real record is that 61.
There is something though, and I hate to even bring this up because, I think I don't like the cheating side of steroids. The rules are the rules, and everybody should live by them. However, saying all that, I do, the steroids doesn't make you a better hitter.
Yeah, you still have to hit the ball, right? Yeah.
You got to hit the ball. And not only that, it doesn't make you stronger. You got to put the work in. What it allows you is to recover so that you can do more work.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's not like they did nothing, but they did cheat.
Right.
And
it's funny, though, that you're cheating to be better, right? It's not
right.
It's not like you're betting against your team or doing something like
that.
So I kind of mixed on it. And there was the argument, too, that young kids now see these guys doing the steroids and being successful doing it. So the argument is now they're more likely to start doing the steroids as well. So,
I don't have any confusion how I feel about it. Cheating is cheating. I'm just saying that I don't, in the back of my mind, lose sight of the Bonds was a great hitter.
Yes.
An unbelievable hitter. And, the hand-eye coordination and all that wasn't altered by his steroids use. And, you still got to, like I said before, you got to do the work. You can't just take steroids every day and never go in the gym.
Right.
I mean, the fact is when you take steroids, you can go in the gym more because you recover quicker.
Right.
And
that's true. Very true. Yes.
You build muscle. And of course, I don't know why I'm explaining that to you. I'm sure you understand all that. So probably far better than I do.
Well, but I think it's a valid point to bring up, though, because a lot of people may not understand that, right? That's
I mean, I've had readers say to me, well, it's fake strength. Well, yeah. I mean, they cheated. They have an advantage, but, it isn't like you can't just take the drugs and then don't go in the gym. Like, I'm done with the gym now because I took steroids. That isn't how it works.
Right.
So,
what do you think if they just said, if they never had a rule that they couldn't use steroids? What if you just said, listen, you want to do steroids, go ahead and do them. We're going to educate you. We're going to educate you, show them how bad they are for you.
But, I mean, but then, you brought this up. It's dangerous for what it says to, today's youth, because, I mean, steroids are bad for your health. There's no doubt. Even though we use them and really well in the medical community to promote healing.
Yep.
I mean, it's what do you take if you have, some chronic bronchitis and all that? You end up with steroids because it does promote healing. And for the same reason it promotes healing is the same reason why your recovery time is better. And when you want to work out. But anyway, we'll get off that subject. A couple of things I want to get into today. I saw a real interesting story in The Athletic. My good buddy Pierre LeBrun, who is so wired in, had a really good piece about the fact that Cadre turned down $8.5 million to stay in the market longer, but he ended up signing a deal for less. So he ended up getting less, although he got more years. So, he turned down 8.5 for 6 years and ended up getting, 7 for 7. So, however that works out.
Who did he turn down the 8.5 with?
Well, Pierre didn't mention that, but I think we got a good guess, don't we?
The Islanders, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. But I don't really know. Could have been anybody. It could have been Colorado too. I mean,
Right. Because who came up with that story that he was going to sign? I forget. Who said he was going to sign with the Islanders during that?
well, a lot of people. John Shannon said it. I think Kevin Weeks said it.
Yeah. And I think we both agree, like with John Shannon in particular, Weeks too. Those are really credible guys, and they said it in a way that it was. They thought this was going to get done. Kind of surprises me though that because it happened pretty quickly. So he turned down 8.5 to stay in the market longer.
Well, no, he stayed. He thought he was going to do better.
Oh.
And in the end, a few weeks later, Pierre reported that was early,
right?
That he turned that down.
Oh, okay. I wonder what happened there, though. So let's assume it was the Islanders, and again, we're making an assumption, we don't know for sure. So they made that offer, and then somebody told Kevin Weeks and John Shannon, with pretty good certainty that he was going to sign. It sounded like it was just a matter of time that he was going to sign with the Islanders.
Well, I mean, as long as we're speculating, which is exactly what we're doing, don't take this as gospel. But we're, I would say that he turned it down early. Then they circled back, and there was a discussion, and some way they walked away feeling as if, okay, he's now going to take it. So
right. I wonder do we know who Kadri's agent was? Do we know that? I'll look it up while we're talking.
I don't.
Because I would assume, like with a guy like Lou Lamoriello, if he was left with the impression that Kadri was going to sign with him, and all of a sudden it doesn't happen, I mean, that agent is probably going to. Again, I don't know the circumstances, but I'm sure Lou would not be too happy with that agent, correct?
Yeah, but again, it could have been Colorado too. I mean, we don't really know. But it certainly changes everything. I mean, just to look at where the Islanders would be if they had a center ice of Kadri and Barzal, So, it really changed everything. And then, look at what's happened. And I brought this up before, but it bears repeating. Like already, I think Brad Treliving is an early favorite for general manager of the year for, all the finagling he had to do to get this team back. And, I got into a discussion on another podcast that I was on about my feeling that I don't know whether they're really a better team in terms of the talent they lost and the talent they gave. I mean, it's a little complicated to figure out. But I did bring up something, and I'll bring it up to you. In terms of the number of hits thrown last year, Tkachuk and Kadri, who had more, do you think?
Well, the way you're asking the question, I'm going to go with Kadri, because I would assume I would have assumed before it would have been Tkachuk, but I'll go Kadri.
Do you think they're similar or?
Yes, very similar.
Yeah. Not even close. Tkachuk had 70 hits last year, and Kadri had 280 or 250 or 260 somewhere area. Yeah. That's but Kadri is a lot older.
Right.
However, Kadri is a center.
Yep.
I find those guys more valuable.
Yeah, we've had that discussion before, and I've come around in your way of thinking. I didn't at first. We had this topic before about saying that centers are more valuable. I was like, I don't think so, but I see it now. I do think the centers are more valuable. Yeah.
Well, they just have to do so much of the defensive work. That's the only way I see it. They're the guy that has to come back, and they go, down low, and they're, So I just feel like they're the skaters. They got a real I bet if you measured, and they do measure it, so we could probably find out how far centers skate in a game. They probably skate more than anybody, other than a referee and a linesman. Or actually, referee, a linesman doesn't skate as much as a referee.
Yeah, that's true. Very true. Yeah.
So, but but anyway, the point I was starting to make is I think it's hard to sort of sort that all out because it's a center versus a wing, and you have the age factor. Kadri's over 30. Tkachuk is still a young man. I think Huberdeau and Gaudreau are similar players. Like we can, maybe you like Gaudreau and I like Huberdeau, or the other way around. But I think they're in the same ballpark in terms of creating offense, being highly skilled players, good on the power play. Can make things happen. And then Calgary gets Weegar out of the deal.
Yeah.
They lose Monahan, but they wanted to lose Monahan. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's complicated. However, the reason why I say we can say they're better, because if nothing else, they come into training camp with no worries.
Yep.
It's all settled.
Right.
We're not wondering whether we know Gaudreau wanted early out. We know we don't have to fool around with Tkachuk now in terms of, is he going to stay? Does he want to sign?
Yeah.
If he does want to sign, how much is this? That's all settled.
Right.
They come in and the only emphasis is we're going to try to win.
Right.
These are our guys. We're going to try to win.
And with two guys that chose to be there, right?
Yeah.
Huberdeau did not have to sign a new contract. He chose to do that.
Yeah.
Kadri was a free agent who chose to pick that team. I think you're dead on right. I certainly don't think they're a worse team. For sure. And again, I'm respectful of those who want to, nitpick and look at that and say, well, yeah, but Kadri's older and all that. Yeah, I mean that's fine. Yeah.
I just think with that alone, that's just a good situation. I bet they're just so relieved.
Yep.
I bet Tree Living sleeps better now that he doesn't.
Imagine what it was like when they lost Gaudreau and then they traded Tkachuk. They're probably thinking like, well, I think you start with just losing Gaudreau and knowing that Tkachuk wasn't going to re-sign. Imagine how it was around the office there. They're like, oh my God, like they had.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's a complication that I don't think fans consider enough, just about the messiness of it all. And players always say, well, we're not bothered by that, but it does. It gets talked about.
Well, look, I can tell you, I was with the Kings when we got word that Wayne Gretzky was getting traded to the Kings, and I can tell you how we felt. We all felt this is like, wow, we're gonna have a real good hockey team. We had a good team before. Now we're going to have a fantastic team with Wayne there. It really changed things.
Right.
So it does really make a difference when you know who you don't have. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I do think, and weigh in on this because you know better than I do, but I do think when players say nobody pays attention to the money side of it, I think that is true. Like, I think, they understand business is business, and that side of it. But when you got this kind of situation, when it impacts, the competitiveness of the team, I think it does alter the way they view
absolutely.
things.
Yeah, because guys want to win. I mean, yes, they want to get paid their money and they want to do well individually, but guys want to win. National hockey players want to win championships. There's no question. They want to be in the playoffs. They want to be a competitive team. So, no, I agree. How about this one again? Our crack reporter is Susan Brooks. Well, Cairo from St. Louis signed an 8-year, $65 million deal. I saw that. Wow. It's just going to be terrible when I say this. Who's he?
He's a really good player, but is the $8 million worth? I mean, Tage Thompson had one good year and he got a long-term deal.
Look at all the long-term deal in Tampa. They're locking guys up, right?
Yeah. Well, now, if I'm everybody in Detroit is stunned that Dylan Larson is still sitting out there with no extension. He'll be an unrestricted free agent next summer. It's a Tkachuk situation.
Right.
And nobody was worried about that. He's a hometown boy.
Right.
He is the captain.
How does he compare to this Cairo then?
I think he's better.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's like, wow.
Yeah. So, but, Steve Yzerman, he kind of holds the line. He's in his mind, I'm sure, and I'm putting words in his mouth, and we wouldn't know because he doesn't talk about contract negotiations. But I got to believe that he is thinking ahead that, I'm going to play Moritz Seider. I'm going to pay Lucas Raymond. I'm probably going to have to pay Simon Edmondson. And if I give, Dylan Larkin and Tyler Bertuzzi, a $9 million contract. So, I mean, I'm sure, Pat Brisson is a terrific agent. So he's looking at all these signings going, yeah, but, and I'm sure Yzerman is pounding his fist.
Sure. Yeah. So what if they came around and didn't sign him and then trade him at the trade deadline to somebody else? What happened? What's the fan base say to that?
They would not like that. But I would say that's also very risky. I mean, I think the Tkachuk situation to me seems the way you got to go in a salary cap, tight cap era. Right. Can you risk, losing players, and I, I know the argument about that. It's not for nothing. You get cap space. I understand that, but perception is sometimes reality, and the perception is you got nothing.
Yep.
So I think that's going to be interesting.
You wouldn't trade Larkin. You wouldn't trade Larkin now. I mean, there's nobody's going to really take him anyways, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't know how you could make any trade right now. Like nobody's got any money, unless you could do I proposed last night in a discussion with another media member. Could you trade Larkin or Bertuzzi? Bertuzzi's in the same boat, exactly the same, unrestricted free agent next summer. And there's been previous, at least this is what we perceive, from previous tension between Yzerman and Bertuzzi.
Yeah, you mentioned that before, yeah.
Yeah, so we perceive that. So, would you trade Bertuzzi, who is exactly the kind of player, in my opinion, that the Toronto Maple Leafs need? Hard-edged, still can play with elite players, scored 30 goals last year, first in line when trouble breaks out for William Nylander.
Oh.
$6.9 million player, so Steve Yzerman has cost certainty, and then let Toronto deal with the headache of signing.
So what is the regulations now in Canada? He's an unvaccinated athlete too.
Well, people are telling me, and I really have not investigated this, but people are telling me they haven't changed, that baseball and the baseball season, players couldn't play in Toronto if they were unvaccinated. So eventually it's got to change. You would think, we're kind of operating in the United States, although saying that, here in Michigan, I know way too many people who have COVID. So
they're still getting them here too. Yeah. Here's a great question by one of our loyal listeners here. If I was a GM, I would not sign anybody for more than 4 years. That's a great statement. I see why people say that.
Yeah.
It really, to me, it depends on the situation, because in some cases where like a lot of these GMs now are locking up these guys for what is good money right now for like 7 or 8 year deals. If the cap starts going back up again, now those deals that look like the player friendly deals now become team friendly deals, because maybe that guy that's making $7 or $8 million, maybe in 4 years could be a $10 million player or $11 million player, based on the new cap numbers. So that's why the GMs are doing this. They're taking a gamble, saying, listen, we like this player. We think he's good. We think he's going to get better. Yes, it's a lot of money to give him right now, but we're actually saving money in the back end of the deal. That's the logic from the team side. Not in all cases. In some cases, it's just that they have to get the guy signed.
Yeah, it's a lot more. I certainly respect that question. And it's one that's constantly being, ask, but it is complicated because you want to have a good relationship with your star players. I've told this story before, but the way it worked in Detroit is they essentially, with Nick Lidstrom, who was the best defenseman in the league, is they just said, tell us what you need and we'll give it to you. Now you can't do that with everyone, but you can do it with Nick Lidstrom, who was very conscious of.
Right. And they're really aware of his character too, right?
For sure. And they, got to the point at the end, Nick Lidstrom didn't even use an agent. He got someone to do the contract for him, but, he just negotiated his own deal because Ken Holland would sort of explain everything. Well, I only use that story to illustrate is that there's always a goal, if you can do it, to be on good terms with your top players. You want them to be happy there. You want them to be content, to not be looking and thinking, well, maybe the grass is greener, in New York or Colorado or whomever is playing well at the time. But it is tricky. And, I always tell people with regard to, the reason why, I never made $8.5 million a year in my days with USA Today is because they simply wouldn't give it to me. So it's not on the onus is not on the players to restrict their salary. The onus is on the owners. If you don't want to pay those guys, then just don't offer the money. But it's a lot easier said than done.
Especially with athletes, especially the ego of athletes. Right?
Yeah.
There's no question. That's one of the reasons I think Kenny Holland was so good was that he would come and talk to the player, and he'd say to the agent first, listen, I'm going to go explain the situation to the player. So it didn't look like he was going behind the agent's back. And I think everybody really trusted Kenny Holland so much and really respected him that he would go to the player and say, listen, we love you here. We want you to stay with this team, but here's what we can pay you based on your role that you're valuable to us. Like, he'd really make the player feel good, but say, this is the most I can pay you. So.
Yeah, and there is a certain amount of buttering that needs to be done. You got to get that and spread it on pretty thick because you're trying to convince them. And Lou Lamoriello, everybody underestimates his ability to make deals. I've heard stories, I'm sure you have too, of Lou writing a number on a napkin and saying to the player, just holding it up, just you and I, if I give you this, can we get this done? And I think the players appreciated the personal service.
Yes.
Like, Lou wasn't going around the agent because he would be calling them right away. And he just said, look, this is where I'm at. I just ran it by your client, that kind of thing. He wasn't cutting out the agent, but he wanted to sort of take advantage of the factor, and maybe not take advantage is too strong. He just wanted to have kind of a personal touch. And
it was real, like it was genuine too. And it wouldn't just be like a one-time thing. He would have have those conversations over and over with players, even when there's not a contract negotiation.
Right. Throughout the season. I mean, he was known to go and talk to the leaders. How do you feel it's going? What do you think we could do? Is there anything you think that we could do? Like, he is a very hands-on GM, but he's a news gatherer. Like, he wanted information, and he always sought to get as much information as he could. So, getting back to where we started this. So, now these, Cairo's contract and all these others, now they're going to impact all the other guys that are still, and, that puts pressure on you too, because Dylan Larkin's going to say, look, if he's worth that, I'm worth this.
Definitely. You can be sure that when Dylan Larkin saw that contract, he'd be like, well, yes, sir. That's
he did. I'm sure he, God danced on the table. I mean, those are all good numbers for him. And, you do comparables.
Right. Totally. So. And that's the funny thing. I think back to when I played, we didn't know what anyone else was making at all. We didn't know when somebody signed a new contract. We didn't know what the numbers were. I do talk to some guys, though. Ron Duguay, he was a higher level player. He seemed to have known what some of the other guys were making. I didn't know anybody. It's so weird now looking back at it. We're not concerned with that. We just felt like we don't have any leverage. They're going to pay us what they want to pay us, and that's it. So
yeah. Well, you and I have talked about your, and you missed out on the golden era of contracts. Yeah. But at the time, what you were making, you felt you were making really good money.
I felt as happy as I thought the teams were very fair to me. I've told this story before too, and it was kind of bad. Rogie Vachon was nice, one of the nicest guys in the game, just a real sweet man and everything. So he was general manager of the Los Angeles Kings, and this is when Bruce McDonald owned the team. So if we went to Rogie and said, okay, this is what I need for the contract, and he said no, we would just go right to Bruce McDonald. And he'd go up to his office and what do you want, Tommy? I tell him what I wanted. We said, okay, we'll get that done.
And then which explains too. And yes, I know Bruce McDonald went to prison, so but I'm just saying in terms of his his relationships with people. He would then tell you, but just go back to Rogie and tell him, well, can you just run it by Bruce because you didn't want Rogie to feel. And he would do that. And then, what I found is I know this from talking to Bernie Nichols. By the way, I just got my box of Bernie Nichols books.
Nice.
So they're out there. This is my one plug if you want to read about the Bernie Nichols career or his time in LA with Wayne Gretzky or what a jokester he was. The book is out.
That'd be a great book too, because I played with Bernie. He's got a fantastic personality.
It was really enjoyable doing with it. As you know, Bernie's very fun to talk to, and my wife misses our calls because I would have him on the speakerphone, and she's heard me interview a lot of athletes in 40 years, and she was really enthralled by Bernie's stories. So.
And they're true. They're true. I saw a lot of them happen. So
So, but anyway, he told the story of Rogie coming back to him after, he had gone and sort of negotiated the deal thing. And he goes, Bruce didn't want to give it to me, but I fought for you, Bernie. So
is that right? That's the funny one. That's good.
Yeah. So anyway, but so it's going to be interesting. We'll see how that all comes down. I mean, I have learned through the years, as you have as a former agent, it's never over till it's over.
Yeah.
Maybe it's taken a little long, but and you don't know. And I actually learned this from Donald Fear and Gary Bettman, who said, the reporters make a mistake by trying to cover negotiations, particularly labor negotiations, as like it's a sporting event. They want to know what the score is as you're going along. Is somebody winning? Is somebody losing? And they both said, it doesn't work like that. You go to bed on Tuesday thinking, oh man, we're not getting anywhere. And you wake up Wednesday and all of a sudden somebody says, well, let's do this. And suddenly it breaks through. Like, it's hard to predict. It's not, there's some ebbs and flows, but there's no one's winning or losing. It just happens. So
especially with experienced guys like that have done it many times before, I believe they go into it pretty much knowing where it's a range anywhere where it's going to end up. It's just how you get there, right? They just don't want to fold in too early and play the cards too early, so they kind of play each other.
Yeah, it's a little cat and mouse. They got to get it going. But anyway, I'm going to see live hockey this weekend. I'll be happy to report next week about that, because I'm going to the one of the better rookie tournaments. I'm going to the Traverse City one, which is called the NHL Prospect Tournament. They used to have even more teams. Now they only have 5. But
who are the 5 teams?
The 5 teams are the Columbus Blue Jackets, the St. Louis Blues, Toronto Maple Leafs, Dallas Stars, and Detroit. I think that's fine.
The Rangers used to go to that as well.
Yeah. No, there used to be 7 or 8 teams there, and then they had a championship and everything else. So
is Dallas Drake's pitcher up in the rink there too? Isn't it? My old client Dallas Drake.
I don't know. I'll look for it though. I mean, I haven't been up there in a few years. I used to try to get there pretty regularly. It was a great place to go to see GMs. Because you'd sit in the stands with them and they'd be watching these tournament games. But I'm going to see some interesting players. Columbus has. They've drafted so well.
Yeah.
Recently, they got Mike Sillinger's kid Cole, who jumped in immediately last year and was, I thought, a really terrific rookie last season. Now he's on the team. Well, the guy they drafted even earlier, Kent Johnson, now he played at Michigan last year, signed. And of course, we know him from the World Juniors, and he helped Canada win a gold medal. He's a really skilled forward. So he'll be at this tournament. David Jiricek, who was drafted in the first round this year. Denton Matacek, another defenseman, I think, is going to be there for Columbus. And then Toronto, Nick Robertson, he's been a prospect in waiting for, it seems like 100 years, but I think this is his 3rd year at this tournament. So I think it's this year for him to move up to the Maple Leafs. And I'm interested in seeing Wyatt Johnston, who he plays for the Windsor Spitfires. And the reason I'm intrigued by him is, he hardly played during COVID. In fact, I'm not sure he played at all. Maybe he didn't. But if he did play, he didn't play much. He might have played at a tournament. And nobody had a real handle on him. And then this year, but even though that it didn't seem like people had a handle on him, Dallas took him in the first round. 20th or somewhere in that range. Right. And then this past season, he was just a dominant performer in the OHL. He was playing for Mark Savard, if everyone remembers him, the former NHL player. Atlanta, Boston. I think he was with Boston when his career ended with concussion, as I recall. But anyway, he just had a monster year in the Ontario Hockey League. And, there's quite a buzz about him. He'll be at this tournament as well, so I'll see him play.
None of those games are televised, are they?
Yeah, they're all streaming, yeah. You can go online. Like if you go to the DetroitRedWings.com, and that's true of most of these tournaments. Most of these tournaments get streamed by their teams. Like I know there's a tournament going on out west there as well. I would guess the Rangers are in one, aren't they? Somewhere.
You know what? I don't know. That's a great question.
Yeah. So, I mean, and these tournaments are fun because young players they care in these games. Like this is not preseason games to them. You know, they're
Yeah,
thinking,
they're better games than the NHL
yeah.
games. Yes, they are. No question.
Yeah, they usually it starts to look a little bit like 1970s hockey
Yeah,
after
yeah.
a while. Yeah, I look forward to those. That's last year. Just to give you an example of how important they are. You know, Lucas Raymond scored 3 goals in his first 2 rookie prospect tournament game, and that really launched him on his way. You know, they thought, well, you know, he'll cool off once he got to training camp, but he looked really good in training camp, and they thought, well, he'll cool off when he's got to play against NHL competition, but he didn't cool off then. And finally, he just forced the Red Wings to take him. Like, they really thought he was going to start in the American Hockey League.
Yeah, I think that was the same for me. I think back to my first training camp too. I was pretty much playing all the rookie games. I think I maybe had gotten one regular season or regular NHL preseason game. But then we played the Islanders minor league team, and they had a tough guy, Hector Marini, that played a little bit in the NHL, but he was down in the minors at that point. And we got in a pretty good scrap. And all of a sudden, next night, I'm up playing NHL games. It was Freddie Shuro was the coach, and once I did pretty good against Hector Marini too. So, and then
I mean, I just made a good argument against my thought that we really do not need all these preseason games in the NHL. You know, that's long been my feeling that there's too much risk of injury, that, you know, you're making season ticket holders pay NHL prices for games that are, you know, you have 7 regulars on it and all that kind of stuff. So I guess my argument would be, all right, well, let's just have a couple extra rookie games and you know, let's do away, because players are in shape year round now. I mean,
they're in shape, but and I do agree with you too. I think we have probably too many preseason games, but there are those cases with those young players that they need those games to show that they can play in the National Hockey League.
Yeah, although I would say that, you know, even the training camp, you get a handle on it. This year I watched in the Hard Knocks thing with the Lions, and in the first week of training camp, they were already decided that a guy was going to be a starting linebacker.
Yeah.
Like, if they can do that in the NFL, which is a really billion-dollar business, you know, so.
Yeah, and you're right. There probably aren't that many guys, rookies, that they didn't think were going to play in the NHL that all of a sudden had such a good training camp. It doesn't happen that often, really.
Well, but yeah, I just think that all these preseasons are too long. So you do have to have some games, though. You know, like you still got to get your timing down, and the game speed is far different.
Do you think when the NHL season starts, do you think the NHL teams are at their start, like the best player? Do you think that you need 5 to 10 games to really get going in the National Hockey League?
Well, you're in a better position to say that. I would say that they're not, like, because people always talk about you being in mid-season form.
Right.
But sometimes mid-season form, you're all bruised up.
Yeah, sure.
So I find that the level of competition at the start of the season, when everybody's feeling good and they're not all banged up and bruised, is usually pretty high.
I remember back my first few training camps. We played so many games back then. When the season started, we were ready to go. I don't think we were saying, okay, we're going to be better in 5 games or better in 10 games. I thought we were ready to go. But that was a different time. We had 2-day practices. We probably played 10 preseason games. So there's a lot.
Yeah, that's too many. Like, whatever they have now, 6, 7, 8, whatever it is now, it's too many. So I just,
because you think about it, they're only in camp for like a matter of days before they start playing games.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, it was weeks before we played a game. We had 2 or 3 weeks of 2-a-days before we start playing a game. Yeah.
And I understand. I mean, we're still a gate revenue-driven league. The revenue is still important, and I want players to make all the money they can. So I get it, but still, it just seems like too much, and we'll see how they go. What else you got on your agenda to talk about today?
There isn't much going on. I was looking. They had a list of all the players, and I just starting to look at it too. All the players that are going on PTOs, those tryout agreements, and it seems like there's a long list too. Where is that? So that's really all I was looking at. There really isn't much going on. I mean, a lot of people are making predictions. There's actually interesting Connor McDavid coming up saying that the Oilers still have a long way to go entering the season. So, because to me, now there's expectations on the Edmonton Oilers. That's the team that I look at and say, listen, with those 2 star players that they've got, and the season they had last year, they've got hopefully better goaltending now. That was the thing that really hurt them last year, I thought. So a lot of expectations. Like if their team, to me, that team is they can't just win a round or 2 rounds. They've got to be going to the Stanley Cup Finals. But again, West there conference, you still got Colorado. You know, Vegas should be a better team, so it's not going to be that easy to. Did I just give Vegas a compliment?
Yeah, you did. You know.
Jeez, I'm slipping.
I think you were with me though. I think you liked the Phil Kessel signing, didn't you? Or,
I do. Yes, totally.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. You know, I thought it was kind of funny. You know, Vegas has a very fun Twitter for those of you who like social media. If you don't follow them, you should. The guy or woman, whoever runs it, is very funny.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. And today they just sent these like how many of you people out there just need some Phil Kessel news? You know, like, and I'm thinking, you know, that's the way to approach Phil Kessel. Like, you know, just promote who he is and what he's about. And
he's going to say, so if they play well, then it's because he's, you know what, it is funny because I am critical of them, I guess more because of the stuff that's happened when Kelly McCrimmon has taken over all the goaltending stuff where they handle all that. But they should be a good hockey team. Like they should make the playoffs and go on a run. That's a good hockey team there, really.
Yeah.
You know,
I saw something interesting today. I ended up writing about it simply because I'm in Detroit and I write for Detroit Hockey Now. But Derek Lalonde, who is their first-year coach, who, for those of you who don't pay much attention to assistant coaches, he was John Cooper's assistant during the back-to-back championships. You know, pretty respected. And now he's Steve Yzerman's guy. Yzerman actually hired him in Tampa, you know, in 2018.
Right.
So he's hiring a guy that he does have some connection to. But the odds came out for the Jack Adams Coach of the Year, the first odds, and Derek Lalonde is 6th on that list.
Oh.
And, you know, I think it's, you know, paying homage a little bit to the fact he's pretty respected for his assistant coach. But I think it has more to do with it that the Red Wings were so bad last year. So they had a low point total. And, you know, broadcasters tend to look at that. Like if you can improve your team by 30 points or so, you know, you're in the mix. So I think they're thinking he has such a low starting point that he hasn't, you know, he should have better odds in order to win this. So I thought it was kind of funny.
Here's a good question. I hate to admit this, Billy Contra. Kevin, did you have anything cool a player might have given you, stick, jersey, anything like that from your days?
I really didn't. And to be honest with you, I regretted when I was done at USA Today that somewhere along the line I didn't. Because you can't help. Like, I'm not friends with a lot of players, but I know a lot of them pretty well. And I regretted the fact the ones that, you know, I did know well, I didn't somewhere along the line, just to have something to hang in my office. So
yeah, it could be an awkward place to get some, but you were so well respected. I think if you asked Sidney Crosby for something, like I think he respects you so much.
Yeah, I wouldn't have done that though. You know, that's the problem. You don't feel comfortable. But near the end, you know, I looked around and said to someone, hey, you know, I would have, liked a Tom Laidlaw stick or, just something like that. But I do regret that I don't really have anything to hang on my wall other than, photos that I've accumulated. And
well, in all seriousness, I'm going to say something very nice about you. So brace yourself. Okay. I think when you have to hang on your wall is the memory of what people thought of you when you did your job. I thought you were so well respected. Like to me, I think that's more to me than some stick or some picture or whatever that you have.
Well, no, I appreciate that. You know, your reputation certainly is
totally
the most important thing as well. But no, unfortunately, I don't have any, good stories on that to be able to tell you. Although, if I thought about it, I probably have seen some people end up with some great souvenirs for for a lot of reasons.
Yeah. John Turner, I did not see this, Susan. Major concerns about the locker room in Philadelphia.
And who was the first to report that? I want to bring this up. That was our boy Tom Laidlaw.
Yeah.
Who said, before I had heard anything of it, because I remember saying to you, I haven't heard that.
Yeah.
And you were right on top of that.
Yeah, it just seemed like, And that's what and I know I agree with you. They think they're a good team. Like they think
they do. Yeah. No, I know. Like, but won't it be fun if we're wrong?
Yeah.
So, yeah. And that's
Torts is going to make them better. Torts is going to change.
Sure. Like I say this to people all the time. If last year's team, like they wouldn't have made the playoffs with Torts, but they would have been a lot more competitive. Like he just demands you be competitive. And and it's all people think it's all about shot blocking. And that's an element of it, but it's just an attitude.
Absolutely.
He wants you to deny space and time, and he wants you to be, when they get the puck, he wants you on top of them.
I think what we should do is just have a camera on him during the first few games.
Oh yeah.
Games, right? Because he'll be all over the players on the bench. If they don't do what he's told them to do, it'll be interesting.
Yeah, it's gonna, and this, but the fact he brought that up, like if I'm a clubhouse lawyer on the Philadelphia Flyers right now, I'm wondering, oh boy,
What does it say about management? I mean, he's an honest man. They know when they hired him what they're going to get with him. What does it say about management that assembled that team too?
Right? Yeah. No, I know. So, but the idea that they could be better is what I love about sports.
Yeah.
It's so unpredictable. Like I'm always amused when people talk in declarative sentences about, they have it all figured out.
Oh, yeah, totally.
And I always tell people, the difference between a sports writer, a good sports writer, and a fan is that I know I have no idea what's going to happen.
Yeah,
I fully understand that, I've written way too many stories that I've had to change in the final 5 minutes of a game. I've seen things that I was absolutely sure was going to happen that don't happen. I've seen things that I never saw coming. And that's the fun of it. That's what makes it so interesting. It's unpredictable.
Yeah. Remember Vegas's first year in the league? All season long, I was waking up in the morning thinking, "There's no way they won last night. There's no way they won last night." They just kept on winning. Even when it was happening, I couldn't believe it was happening.
Yeah. And we witnessed what was happening with that team at the draft, expansion draft.
Yeah.
But we didn't understand fully how good it was at the time. Like, now when you look back, it seems fairly obvious that they were getting 2 and 3 assets from several teams, and those assets were good. I mean, think back, they maneuvered to get Theodore, who has ended up being a really fine defenseman. They maneuvered and they got the kid from Minnesota. Now I'm drawing a blank.
Marc-Andre Fleury was a big one.
They cut it. That was a backdoor deal with Jimmy Rutherford. They've got more assets out of Nashville because David Poyle didn't want them taking somebody. I don't remember who it was, but they ended up with all kinds of players that Carlson out of Columbus.
Right. And you remember what was important there too is that Marc-Andre Fleury, although he was a big part of it there, he didn't play like the first 20 games. He got hurt early, right? And they were going like the second and third string goaltenders, and I'm thinking there's just no way they're going to keep winning. And again, they did.
Yeah. No, that was just really well handled, and that was your very good friend and a guy that I know well, George McPhee, and he did a really good job on that. And I do think that the momentum created by the rabid nature of the fan base was helpful.
Yeah.
It was just a happening in Vegas, and players were fired up, like they were going to the rink, and it was like the gladiators in Rome. Like the fans were just so pumped up. It was so loud in that building, and
as much as it was a terrible story for the city, that shooting right at the start of the season, the mass shooting. Again, it was terrible. Lives were lost, but it actually rallied everybody together.
It did. Yeah.
The team, there's a fantastic video out there of how the team handled that. Really embraced the city embraced them. It really brought everybody together. Again, terrible story, but they did some fantastic stuff. So,
Speaking of that, I know we're running out of time here. I'll try to be quick on this, but I forgot I wanted to speak about this. I've written about it now in 2 different publications, just because I think it's an important thing. Boris Salming, of course, was diagnosed a month ago with ALS, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease. And most of us understand what that's all about. And it's a very, very difficult diagnosis. The average life expectancy after diagnosis is 2 to 4 years. However, I was reading, as I'm apt to do, in a Swedish newspaper, but it's a website, Expressen. They had an interview with Salming's doctor. And she is one of the leading researchers on that disease. And she has basically told Expressen that Salming, and this shouldn't surprise you, anyone who knows how courageous he was when he showed up in the NHL and, battled, and, he fought Dave Schultz one night.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I mean, that's what Salming did in the name of trying to prove that Swedes could play over there. So this is surprising, but he has told her, you go ahead and use my name and my diagnosis and whatever you need to tell people about my circumstances to bring awareness to this disease. And she's pointed out that, now 10%, which this surprised me, 10% of the people, 1 in 10, are now living much longer, significantly longer than that 4-year diagnosis. And she's now working with 9 different drugs that they're testing now. And she said in America, they just are close to it. And that prompted me to look up Mark Curtin. Those of you who may remember him, he's a little bit older, but he played for the Canucks, the Maple Leafs, the Red Wings. He scored 18 goals one year. If you go to his Twitter account, he says, that don't feel sorry for me, find me a cure. Right. And he's battling as well. And, he's another guy that, hey, he's not going down without a fight. They're trying to bring awareness to it. I just really appreciated that story. So I've, just kind of put it out in my.
That's fantastic. Yeah, great to hear. You know what? I am a really believer. Like, I think the science has proven out that if you take that attitude towards, I'm not saying that you can heal yourself with a certain attitude, but I'll tell you what, if people just sit back and accept their fate, you got to fight. I think I really do believe that people can really help themselves a lot if they fight. They have that mentality that they are not giving in on this thing. Yeah.
Yeah. But I just thought it was I loved her optimism. She really did seem to feel like, look, it's just the situation's a lot better, that, we do have some optimism here. It's not all doom and gloom. So I want to pass that along.
I'm glad you brought that up. I like that stuff a lot. That's excellent.
All right. Well, if you want to read me and maybe read that story, DetroitHockeyNow.com, also HockeyBuzz.com.
And if you'd like to listen to the radio version of this show, you can go to radio.co at 365 Sports. Everybody have a great weekend. We will see you on Monday.